Most goat owners think a simple wooden lean-to is all their animals need to survive a hot summer. But what actually happens inside that little shelter might surprise you. Picture a small farm outside Amarillo, Texas. Sandra, a retired schoolteacher, raises 6 Nubian goats in her backyard. Every July, she noticed her goats panting, refusing to eat, and hiding in the shade of her porch instead of using the shelter she built for them. She assumed goats were just being stubborn. The real problem was heat trapped inside a poorly designed shelter, and it was making her animals miserable without her realizing it. Here's where it gets interesting. Goats don't sweat the way humans do. They release heat mainly through breathing and through the skin on their ears and legs. That means airflow matters more than shade alone. A shelter that blocks the sun but traps hot, still air can actually be worse than no shelter at all. This is exactly what was happening to Sandra's goats. Her 3-sided shed kept out the sun, but it also kept out the breeze, turning the inside into an oven by early afternoon. A local feed store owner explained something most new goat owners never hear. Goats start feeling heat stress once temperatures climb past 80 degrees, especially when humidity is high. Their body temperature can climb dangerously fast, and by the time an owner notices heavy panting, the animal is already struggling. That sounds like common sense, but many people don't connect the dots until their goats stop eating or start losing weight during a heat wave. The fix Sandra eventually used cost her about $10 and took less than an hour to build. Instead of relying only on walls for shade, she raised one side of her shelter roof about 8 inches using scrap wood blocks. This created a small gap between the roof and the top of the walls. That gap let hot air escape upward while allowing a cross breeze to move through at goat height. It's the same principle used in old barns and chicken coops for generations, long before anyone had electric fans or misting systems. The surprising part is how much difference that small gap made. Within days, Sandra noticed her goats spending more time inside the shelter instead of avoiding it. They were lying down calmly during the hottest part of the day, instead of standing in the yard looking for a stray breeze. A local veterinarian later told her that improving airflow, even without adding any cooling equipment, can lower the effective temperature inside a shelter by several degrees. That's often enough to keep animals comfortable without spending money on fans or electricity. This is where many homeowners get caught off guard. They assume spending more money means better results, so they invest in expensive cooling systems before fixing basic airflow problems. A rancher in Oklahoma shared a similar story. He installed a costly fan system in his goat shed, but the animals still overheated because hot air had nowhere to escape. Once he added a simple roof vent gap like Sandra's, the fan actually started working the way it was supposed to, pulling in fresh air instead of just recirculating hot air. What happens next surprises many people. Once airflow is fixed, other small additions make an even bigger difference. Elevated wooden platforms let goats lie above ground level, where heat radiates upward from soil and stone. A shallow pan of cool water near the entrance encourages goats to hydrate more often, since goats are naturally picky about drinking warm or dirty water. None of these fixes require special equipment, just an understanding of how goats naturally respond to heat. Most people don't realize that heat stress in goats isn't just uncomfortable. It can affect milk production, weight gain, and even fertility later in the season. A shelter that seems fine to the human eye can quietly be working against the animals living inside it. That's why simple airflow fixes often matter more than fancy upgrades. By the end of summer, Sandra's goats were healthier, calmer, and noticeably more active in the mornings and evenings. She didn't need a generator, a misting system, or an expensive renovation. She just needed to let hot air escape the way nature intended. The biggest lesson here isn't about spending more money on farm animals. It's about understanding how they naturally cool themselves and building shelters that work with that instinct instead of against it. Sometimes the simplest $10 fix makes a bigger difference than any high-tech solution ever could.